So my name is John Dalrymple. I'm on the OMA Council, and I work for Canada's National Ballet School. And it's my pleasure to introduce our two presenters for this session, which is about taking control of your career. So Christine Moreland, in the pink, is the Museum Succession Project Coordinator at the OMA. Christine completed her MA in Museum Studies at the University of Leicester and is currently the Museum Succession Project Coordinator. She has worked in public programming at heritage sites in Canada and the UK for over 5 years. Christine additionally consults on exhibition development and interpretive planning projects. She's passionate about professional development and the future of the museum sector. Jenna Rose, in the black, is a coordinator of strategic initiatives at Canada's National Ballet School. That's where I know you from. Okay. Jenna, is a coordinator at the school, where she contributes her knowledge in fundraising, research, and project coordination. Jenna holds a Master's in Museum Studies from the University of Toronto, has held positions with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, and the Toronto International Film Festival, and has also worked alongside the OMA on various projects. And I can tell you all, she's also a terrific person to share an office with. So, without further ado, can I get a round of applause? And I'm going to hand it over to the ladies.
Thank you, John. That's great. Can everyone hear me okay? No?
No.
A little bit closer. Okay,
Closer.
there we go.
Yep, there we go.
All right,
Real
so
close.
the name of our session is Take Control of Your Career, as you can see. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my experience, as is Jenna. Mm-hmm. And at the end we're going to show a 5-minute video from Mar Dixon, and if you're big on social media, you may have come across Mar Dixon. And I'll let her video kind of speak to what she does in the sector, but it's really impressive. And what I want her to speak to today is how to create a really strong online presence and online brand, and how that can be helpful for emerging museum professionals. So you're going to kind of hear from her as well. So what we want to talk really about today is how do we get EMPs moving from entry-level jobs to more senior positions. Jenna and I are going to take a really realistic view of what the museum sector in Ontario is like today. So that of course includes a lot of challenges, but also hopefully we'll highlight some opportunities. We'll speak from both of our career experiences and career paths and discuss lessons learned, as well as kind of provide some best tips if we can. Mm-hmm. And then we'll also include some advice from more seasoned and experienced museum professionals who have really succeeded in the museum sector. So we're going to hear some tips from them. At the end, we're hoping that you'll get out of the session a bit of a better understanding of your strengths and skills as an emerging museum professional, and be able to identify areas for growth and think about sometimes, it's better to get off that mainstream path and go on an alternate career path, and that really brings you around to that end success that you're looking for.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So in preparing for this presentation, you're going to hear our thoughts, and we've worked through our processes of finding our paths in the career. But we thought it'd be really valuable to get feedback from emerging museum professionals and students about the content for this presentation. So we actually arranged a meetup in Toronto with some students and some new professionals, and we asked them what they would want to get out of a session like this, because it really is for you. And so some of the questions that they're hoping to have answered and that we're trying our best to address in this presentation are: what can you do to keep productive in the sector when you have gaps in your career path? How do you sell your museum experience to a non-museum workplace? How do you identify and market your transferable skills? We're talking about the importance of networking, which we all realize is really key. And everyone's keen to hear about museum professionals working in non-museum organizations, because we're seeing this more and more. Alternate career paths and thinking outside the box is really important, as we all know, in this sector. So that's, again, something we're going to touch on. So while we think we have some fairly good advice, we thought it would be great for you to also hear from some senior level management and executive leadership positions as well. And so I think we have 4 videos from professionals, and we wanted to ask them, if you could give one piece of advice to emerging museum professionals today, what would it be? So here are the videos. Okay. Bear with me.
My advice to you is take advantage of all these awesome people that are surrounding you today at the conference and suck all of their brilliant ideas out of their heads. There is a mountain of wealth of information that people are so generously willing to share. And so my best advice to you is find somebody you've never talked to before, step up, introduce yourself, and have a great conversation.
I think self-evaluation is probably one of the most important things at this stage. Is figure out what you need to do, what skills you need to develop, and how you need to develop those in order to get ahead in this competitive marketplace. Talk to colleagues, talk to professionals, talk to other peoples in other museums, figure out where you can sort of benefit that. And when you figure those things out, try and take initiative in your workplace. Try and initiate a few things that really maybe can build on those skill sets, give you the skills, develop those activities, and really put you ahead of your colleagues.
I hear you're looking for some advice. I'm John Dalrymple. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Canada's National Ballet School. And my advice for how you can move up the ranks quickly in the museum field is to appreciate the fact that if you are not known, you will not get a job for your potential. You will only get a job for what you've done. So if you're starting out young in your career and you feel like you have a lot of potential, my recommendation would be find an organization where you think it would be a good fit with the kind of work you want to do, and get any job that's available there. Don't imagine that you're overqualified for any job that you get at that museum. And once you've got that job, make sure you do what you really have to do in that job well, so your employer who needs that job done is happy, but then use and demonstrate your potential to show how you can add more value in that organization, make an effort to understand where that organization is going. And whether it's large or small, organizations always have opportunities for growth. People get fired or quit or retire all the time. So if you stick around and are a known entity, you will be recognized for your potential, and you'll find that you'll be given opportunities to fast track your career if you take that approach. And one bonus piece of advice I would give is the collection of individuals you work with in your workplace are way more important than the quality or caliber of the collection you might be working with. So I'll leave you with that.
One piece of advice for emerging museum professionals: show up. Woody Allen said that 80% of life is showing up, and he didn't mean networking. He meant taking part in life. So find something that you're passionate about in the museum community or in the world at large. Contribute your time and energy to helping to address whatever that issue is, or to helping make it happen in a sincere and authentic way. That makes all the difference. So show up. Make like-minded friends at all levels of the museum community or the broader community, thereby advancing your career and perhaps helping that of others. In the end, advancing yourself is done by advancing others and your community. My advice is go out and make a difference. Thanks. Good luck.
My advice to you is take advantage of all these awesome people that are surrounding you.
Next, no, okay, here we go.
Okay, so I just want to touch briefly upon some opportunities that you can get outside of the actual, museum or art gallery. So something that we got asked by emerging museum professionals is, where else can you work? And actually Jenna and I were just kind of spitballing about this and throwing out ideas, and we came up with a lot of people we know who work in very similar organizations, or they're at least using their museum studies skill set in other places. So performing arts organizations, sometimes even law firms have collections. TD has an art collection, so you can work for a lot of different companies using your museum skills without that kind of title of having museum or art gallery in there, which both Jenna and I have in our experience as well. So I'm going to talk a bit about my career path and give you some lessons learned, I hope. I've been on the museum career path, or my museum career path, since 2008, and looking back, it was not a direct or an easy path at all. I could never have predicted that I would be here today in 2008. And even if I had known this is where I would end up, if I tried to build a kind of career ladder from 2008 to now, it would never look like what my actual resume is. And I'm sure a lot of people in the room today, if you're working in the sector, you probably have a very similar experience. However, kind of going off path and having different experiences outside of the museum have been really rewarding, amazing opportunities, and I don't think I would trade that for a more direct career path. So I'm not saying this kind of stuff to dissuade you. It's still really exciting, and it's still a really wonderful opportunity. So I'll talk a bit about what I experienced after my master's at the University of Leicester. I came back really excited, really pumped to work in museums, and there were no jobs. Now, I didn't help myself because I actually came back from England and decided to try a new city, and I moved to Halifax. And as soon as I landed in Nova Scotia, every single person I talked to said, "There are no jobs here. why did you move to Nova Scotia? And I was like, no, I'll make it happen. I'm not too worried about it. I have a great skill set and museum background, and I'll make it work. And I was wrong, and they were very right. Unfortunately, there were only really part-time work or small contracts in museums in the East Coast. And that 8 months that I lived in Halifax before I moved back to Ontario was some of the hardest months of my life. I was really doubting myself a lot, doubting my skill set, doubting who I was as a museum professional, and whether I should even continue on in the sector. But I was able to kind of come out on the other side, and I am still in the sector today, and I'm still really passionate about museum work. So I wanted to kind of look at a few things that you might be able to do in your own careers to get a sense for, how to take control of it and how to really move yourself forward and feel like you're making a positive impact and you're doing really wonderful things. It's kind of knowing yourself is, I think, a very key part of it. It's something that Clark talked about in the tip video. It's taking time out of your life and out of your career to do a self-assessment. And so this is really important at the beginning of your career, but also in any kind of period or slump or anything like that. However, I've talked to museum professionals at every stage in their career, and everyone thinks that it's very beneficial. So get a sense of where your skills are and what your strengths are and what your experiences are, and then also be able to identify your areas of growth. So I have a few tips about that. In any job or any volunteer experience that you're doing, make a log of every task and every activity that you've done. It's something that I had to do during my internship. I was at the National Mining Museum Scotland, and it was part of my program to write down every single task. And it was very beneficial because actually 6 months after that experience, I could not have told you everything that was on that list. So our memories are really short, and it's a great thing if you're applying to jobs in the future to be able to have that reference point of all the things that you've done in the past. That's my one tip. When you're looking for things that you need to improve, or you're kind of questioning why can't you get that ultimate job that you really want, a good thing to do is to find a job ad online of that dream job. It's a past job or a current job, it doesn't really matter. Take a look at the requirements for the job and compare it against your resume. What's missing? Where are the gaps? Very, very simple thing, but very few people actually do that. And if you're having trouble kind of identifying where those gaps might be, give it to an outside friend or a colleague or a family member and have them do that activity for you, and you'll be surprised kind of what you see coming out of that. And when you hear a lot about strengths and weaknesses as you're going through your career, I don't like the word weaknesses, but something I do wish that someone had told me earlier on was that focusing on weaknesses is really not a beneficial thing, and trying to correct them or overcome them, trying to correct them is not a beneficial way to spend your time. What I've really found in my career was that if there's something that you're not excellent at, that you're not inherently good at, take note of it, but make sure that you can find a way to overcome it in your own workplace and your own work experience. So I'll use a personal example for that. I'm not a very detail-oriented person, which maybe I shouldn't be saying if there are any potential future employers out there. It's not something I'm great at. I love big ideas. I love big ideas, and I love getting them out on paper, and I love working with people. So sometimes when I'm doing project coordination, it's really hard for me to make sure I get all those tiny little details actually written down on paper and make sure that they're accomplished. So what I try to do for myself is to set early deadlines, make sure I give myself enough time to take a second look at all my work, and if I can get someone else in my workplace to take a second look too, or a third look, that's really beneficial for me. So I don't really think of that, that lack of detail focus in my work as being a weakness. It's just something that I have to deal with in my life. But I've never tried to spend a lot of time trying to overcome it because I just don't think that I'm ever going to change. I'm a certain age, and at this point, things don't really change. And one question we got from EMPs that I want to focus on is how do you apply to jobs outside of museums when your entire resume screams art gallery and museum? You can also think of the reverse. If you're trying to get into museum and art galleries and all your experiences elsewhere, what do you do? How do you make yourself attractive to future employers? So I have a few tips. I'd say something really obvious that you've probably heard before. Make sure that you tailor your information on your resume and cover letter to the actual job that you're applying for. I've been at the hiring table, and I was shocked at how many people were applying to our job, and in the cover letter they would say the wrong institution, or they would have skill sets from 10 years ago that were completely irrelevant to the job they were applying for. And when I say that, irrelevant, it's that they didn't do the work to show me how it's relevant, because there's no point in having a standard resume and sending it out to everybody and expecting them to be able to interpret how your experience and skill set and knowledge applies to that job. You should be doing that work for them, okay? So really take a look at the language that you're using on your resume and cover letters and make sure that it's appealing to your future employers. So you should be looking at things like transferable skills, communication, working with a team, leadership, digital skills, planning. All of those things are really important. And be able to tell the employer why you're applying to that job. What attracted you to it and why do you think you could do it? So again, just do that work for the organization. And when you're taking a look at the language on your resume, make sure that you're using really professional kind of business language. This is not to say that you should be lying, obviously, but rather than saying, you know, I sent emails in a volunteer position to the museum curator, you can say that you communicated to internal and perhaps external stakeholders. You could say that you represented the organization or you represented the project to external individuals. Any kind of business language is really beneficial in your resume, and it just makes it sound like you're aware of who you are as a person and who you are as an emerging museum professional. And kind of speaking to that concern that employers will look at your resume and see a lot of experience that's outside of museums, I don't think it's as much of a concern as EMPs think it is. From what I've seen of employers is that they're really looking for diversification in their workplace. So they're looking for people to bring in skill sets from other places. So if you have that experience, speak to it. And the opposite can be true as well. You know, there's no reason why someone at a bank wouldn't be really interested in someone with a museum skill set if you can show them why you should work there, if you could show them why you think their organization is the best and how your skills transfer. So once you spent that time doing that self-assessment, getting a sense of who you are and where you want to go, how do you actually get there? Looking at my experience, there's a few things that I would recommend that you can do to, again, take control of your career, but really try to move yourself forward as well. Sometimes it's not always about moving forward. If you're in that slump, it can just be staying connected to the museum sector when you're working in another organization or completely outside the field. So I would recommend seeking opportunities through, this is not going to be a shocker, volunteer opportunities and internships. Consider consulting, and then really spend time and money and energy on professional development. Okay? I really like this quote from Sheryl Sandberg. I love her book, Lean In, but this I just thought was really interesting. You know, don't look for volunteer opportunities that are advertised on websites. Find something that fits you and is really good for you. And if you went to the Bridges and Barriers session yesterday, this is something that might have been Kathy Blackburn, who was wonderful and is here today, was talking about, is that if you're actually volunteering and you've sought out an opportunity and it's an unpaid volunteer opportunity, that organization is going to try to make sure that you get the best experience possible because they're very aware of the fact that they're in your debt, okay? So don't just go for the standard online job or online volunteer opportunity, but find one yourself. So from my own experience, I was volunteering at the ROM in the hands-on gallery for about a year, and I felt that it was not challenging me in any way because a lot of the work I was doing was the exact same that I was getting paid for in my actual job at the Legislative Assembly of Ontario or Queen's Park. And so I reached out to someone in the interpretive planning section of the ROM, Courtney Murfin, and I'd met her at a social event about 6 months before. And I just asked her, is there any opportunity to volunteer? This is my skill set, this is what I can do. What can I do for you, essentially? And she was really wonderful, and she set me up with an opportunity, so I ended up creating the interactive hands-on activities in the Pompeii exhibition that's currently on display at the ROM. You know, and I got to sit in on project meetings every week with head curators and head project managers at the ROM that I never would have been exposed to in the hands-on gallery. So I would just really, really encourage you to seek out that opportunity. Similarly, I was on the ICOM Canada website, just kind of checking it out, seeing if there were any opportunities there. And I looked at their board, and I realized that I knew Ryan Dodge from the ROM, who's actually on the board of ICOM Canada. And I reached out to him and said, is there any volunteer opportunities at ICOM? And he said, actually, they've never had anyone approach them before to be a volunteer. But because I reached out and because he was willing to work with me, we ended up doing these Google Hangouts on air, and so they happen every few months. They're free opportunities, and they're really trying to reach out to EMPs and get them more aware of ICOM Canada and what they do. So again, you can really have positive experiences coming out of this and really seeking your volunteer opportunities that work for you and that build your skill sets that you want to build. Okay? And volunteering and internships can turn into actual jobs. So at the Ontario Museum Association, where I currently work, we have 4 people on the payroll, either part-time or full-time, who started out at the OMA as interns, as summer students. We actually have some of them here today. So we try to do that at the OMA, and I know a lot of people have started out in volunteering, and they actually turn into a full-time job opportunity for them. So it really can happen. A lot of it, of course, is being at the right place in the right time and taking every opportunity that comes your way. So if you're volunteering in a very small part of an organization, but you hear of an awesome project going on elsewhere, talk to the people in charge and ask if you can participate. What the worst that could happen is that they say no, but you've shown initiative, and that's a really wonderful thing. Museum people really want to help others. I mean, you heard that in the video too. Helping others really helps yourself, and museum professionals are aware of that, so they're willing to support you in any way that they can. Oh, an example of that from the OMA, actually, we had an intern from the Toronto Museum Studies program this summer, and she was working with us when the Toronto Museums Network got started up, and so she was actually able to help develop some of the materials that were used in those initial meetings and to attend the meetings, which I don't think there were any other EMPs who were able to have that opportunity. So just really, really seek out opportunities that are going on in the organization you're with. Consulting. This was a terrifying thing for me. When I was in Halifax, this is the only kind of work that I got in the museum sector. So I ended up reaching out to an organization called Form Media, and they're an interpretive planning firm. They didn't have anyone in the organization with a museum studies background at all. Their interpretive planning firm was basically made up of architects and graphic designers. So I was able to bring a skill set that they didn't think they'd be able to access in that area, and that was extremely exciting for them. And although it was terrifying for me because I had no experience in consulting and it was a new experience, it was one of the most rewarding things I think I've done in my career, and something that sparked my interest in that. Now I kind of want to get into interpretive planning. I would love for that to be part of my future job. So consulting is something that you can consider as an emerging museum professional. The best way to do it, I would say, is approach someone who's already established, so whether that's an individual or a company, and talk to them about opportunities. But before you do that, again, make sure you do the self-assessment. Identify your skills that you're bringing forward and make sure that you're meeting a gap in the market, that you're bringing something that other people aren't able to offer. Be as professional as possible. Create a website, get yourself some business cards, be really able to promote yourself as an individual who's professional, even though you're an emerging museum professional. Okay? Something else to do with consulting is that you should make sure that you are part of an association, like the Ontario Museum Association, just saying. But make sure that you put money aside for professional development. It is very, very, very important. I was reading online in some business magazines that you should put aside about 3% of your annual income towards professional development. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is more than you think. And if you can't afford it because you're a student or an EMP and you just don't have it in your budget, there's a lot of other ways to do professional development kind of on the cheap. So if you know any universities or colleges in your town, odds are that they offer symposiums or conferences, maybe lectures or webinars. And since those things are targeted for students or run by students, they're going to be really cheap, which is excellent. Outside of that, you might have an alumni association from your own school that you attended. You might have local galleries and museums that are offering opportunities for professional development. And there's also bursaries out there too, particularly through the Canadian Museum Association. And I just want to give an example of how I was really able to kind of maximize different opportunities to fund a professional development chance that I was extremely passionate about. So in 2013, I wanted to attend the Historical Thinking Summer Institute, and it's a week-long kind of school immersive experience in Vancouver, and I was living in Toronto. And I just thought, there's no way that I can afford to do this. But it ended up only costing me about $30 in bus fare. So what ended up happening was that the organization who ran the institute, they offered bursaries for flights, which I was approved for. I applied for the Canadian Museum Association bursary to actually pay for the registration for me to attend. And then my workplace paid for the book. They weren't able to give me the time off work, so I had to take vacation time. They weren't able to actually pay me to go to this opportunity, but I was able to kind of maximize every single thing that I could possibly think of to really make sure that I was able to go and take this professional development opportunity. So I'd encourage you to be as creative as possible and look for different things kind of outside the box. I have a friend in the States who went to school with me. She really wanted to attend the AAM conference, which is very expensive. And so she actually set up a crowdfunding thing online, and she got her friends and families to donate, and she was able to attend the conference. So you really can think outside the box and be as creative as possible. People do want to be supportive of you. And then the last thing I just want to kind of touch upon is overall lessons that I've learned along the way. So you won't be too surprised by most of these, I'm sure, but be ready to fail. And Kathy Blackburn said something yesterday in a session during Bridges and Barriers about how if you do feel like you've had a failure experience, take that time afterwards to reflect on why it felt that way What were you missing? What stopped you from succeeding? And how can you make sure in the future that that's not an issue? Okay? Helping others really does help you, so make those connections. If you know of 2 people working on similar projects, introduce them. It's a very, very simple thing, but it's going to create a lot of positive energy out there, especially if you believe in karma. That's a great thing. Yeah, people love talking, as you can probably tell by this conference. We love talking about ourselves and our experiences, so don't be scared to approach someone and just initiate a conversation. And I think overall what I've seen from my career is that going off path and being outside the museum sector actually gives you a better view of what's going on inside of it, and that's really important. So I'll pass it over to Jenna for her experiences and lessons.
Okay. So when I started on my career path, I really didn't have any structured career goals at all when I embarked on this journey, but I really think that's benefited me a lot along the way. I've gone with the flow, I've let my connections and my progressing experiences guide me along my path, and I've been open to every single opportunity that's ever presented itself. I've never discounted any of my related or non-related experiences, and I've embraced the fact that to some extent my career trajectory is malleable and that various factors do shape that along the way. So I love this quote: "Those who don't think outside the box are easily contained." A common theme in my story is thinking outside the box and being creative in your career, whether that's how you approach people, the networking events that you attend, organizations you're considering, in how you market yourself, how you tell your story, and volunteer opportunities. It really is critical. So 2 years ago, I was an underemployed museum studies graduate. I was waitressing in my hometown full-time, and I was living on my mother's couch. I had graduated with my master's in museum studies 1 year prior, and I had sent out over 300 resumes during that 1 year period. And I have to admit, I was so impatient, and I was just waiting to break into the arts and culture sector. But it's okay, that does happen, so try to find some patience, because it could take you some time. So to go back to the beginning of this whole tale, in 2009 I applied and was hired as the assistant curator at a very small municipal museum in my hometown of Alliston called the Museum on the Boyne, and I worked there on extended contracts for about 6 months. I then applied to the Master's in Museum Studies program, and got in, and so this was sort of where my whole career kind of launched. And as soon as I started the program, my main focus was on securing volunteer positions. And Christine spoke a lot about this, so I'm not going to get too detailed, but especially when you're in an institution like the University of Toronto with so many opportunities around you, really seize those opportunities and leverage the fact that you are a student. Having like student in your title or even emerging young professional is so beneficial, and it really is valuable. And so one of the positions that I held actually was with the Ontario Museum Association. I volunteered at my first conference in, I think, 2010, working the registration desk, because I thought, what better way to get face time with all of these museum professionals in the whole province, and sort of acting as the face of an organization and their first point of contact than working at a registration table. So it really is vital in your early career years to use your free time to volunteer, to build your skill sets, but equally importantly, to build working relationships and positive rapport and get your face out there and being recognized. And like John said in his video, no one's going to give you a job to do something that you've never done before, so this is an opportunity for you to build those skill sets. Now, the Museum Studies program offers an internship course, which I'm sure there's a lot of you in the room that know this. And I realized rather quickly, as soon as I started this program, that when people find jobs in the arts and culture sector, they really never leave. The turnover rate isn't high, and I anxiously realized that there were more of us holding or pursuing degrees than actually had full-time jobs. So this is where thinking outside the box is so critical. I decided to think more broadly in terms of internship opportunities, and I turned to the governing bodies of museums in Ontario instead of focusing my internship on one specific site. I arranged a double-duty type role where I worked on grant intake at the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and Sport, and I was also able to act as a liaison between the ministry and the Ontario Museum Association. And like many internships and many jobs, there's that other duties as assigned line in the job description. And this really came into play for me right out the gate in my internship. my role sort of changed quite a little bit and evolved right from the beginning, but I leapt right into it, and I was so grateful for the extended new opportunities to gain more experiences, and I just embraced whatever was kind of handed to me or given to me. And this really is key, embrace every opportunity. And you can approach each opportunity in a way that will allow you to grow and expand your skill sets, and at the very least, accepting curveball tasks and duties and sort of embracing that other duties as assigned role in a zen and constructive way. It demonstrates your flexibility, but better yet, your malleability to a potential employer. I also decided to pursue an internship type position for my exhibitions course project. This is also offered through the Museum Studies program. I had one of those like Oprah aha moments where I thought, instead of working with a group of my fellow students on an exhibition and mounting an exhibition in a space, because I'm not a super curatorial oriented or creative person that way, I thought it would be really beneficial for me to maybe work directly with an organization on an established exhibition. So I ran this by my professor, and he was up for it. And so I was able to work in an 8-month internship into my schedule. And I wasn't sure where or who I wanted to do this internship with, but something very serendipitous happened, and a colleague of mine from the ministry handed me the business card of someone working at TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival. And he said to me, and it seemed kind of random at the time because I never would have thought that TIFF would be relevant, and he handed me the business card and he said, "I really think you would like to work here, and I think this would be a great fit for you." And he handed me this business card based on what he knew about me professionally and sort of where I wanted to get some experience, but he also handed that business card to me based on what he knew about me personally. And he knew I loved film, and I was very into pop culture and that whole scene. And so a piece of advice I would give to you is to not be afraid to make personal connections. It's okay to reveal your interests and your hobbies and your guilty pleasure film and book lists with your colleagues and mentors. You should have a personality wherever the organizations are that you're volunteering or working, because this is what really sets you apart and connects you to people on a basic human level. Okay, so I then did what all of us as emerging professionals are terrified to do, and I sent a cold email to this person whose business card that I was holding. But in hindsight, I've actually realized that the cold email has been the key to my most successful career pursuits. And again, it's really about leveraging that opportunity as an emerging professional or a student to just email someone, introduce yourself briefly, and ask them to sit down and have a coffee with you. Because people are happy to help, like Christine touched on quite a bit. So I reached out to TIFF and I explained that TIFF had just opened its doors to its permanent home. They had new exhibition spaces. I thought maybe there was an opportunity for them to accept some free labor. So obviously they responded in a positive way to that. As luck would have it, they had been discussing internally about creating a docent program for their exhibition spaces. And so my future supervisor and I embarked on this 8-month journey, creating this docent program that's now evolving and in full swing at TIFF Bell Lightbox. And so it was an incredible experience for me, and it was thinking outside the box, within a light box, whatever. There's a joke in there. But then I realized that once I completed that internship, there was no opportunity for me to stay on with TIFF, which was really disappointing in the moment. But I was confident in the fact that I had made an impression at TIFF and that one day, maybe, there'd be an opportunity. And so that little nugget of opportunity presented itself in September 2012, which was following my graduation from the program in April. And I was offered a short-term contract working as a relief receptionist during the actual festival in September. And I instantly said yes. And a girlfriend of mine actually questioned my judgment, and she said, "Why would you give up a lucrative waitressing job to work during it's 4-week or an 8-week contract in an organization that has nothing to do with your career path during literally one of the most stressful times out of the whole year for that organization? Why would you ever do that?" But I saw the long-term impact that this could have on my career. It's about embracing every opportunity, right? And I consider this a true gift because TIFF wanted me back, so that was a good sign. And working reception offered me more face time with donors, members, government officials, sponsors, program partners in the 4 weeks of my contract than most employees working there gain in an entire year. And I was given the unparalleled opportunity to act as a face for the organization, which is incredible. And so I looked at it as an opportunity similar to the interview Olympics. I treated every phone call, email, face-to-face encounter as if it were about to land me a job, or at the very least was going to turn into a fruitful connection. And I was conversing with more arts and culture professionals in Toronto than I really ever dreamed possible. And it might seem a bit over the top and a bit fantastical, but you really do have to treat each encounter and each conversation, every connection you make, with an attitude that it just might lead you somewhere, because you don't know. So after that contract, I spent the next year building upon my professional relationships. I was keeping up socially with my networks and my colleagues in the field. I was volunteering at the OMA, all while waitressing full-time, living at home. I was just waiting for one of my resumes to get noticed. And like I said, I applied to 300 jobs that year. And it's really easy to slide from hopeful right down to anxiety-riddled panic at the state of your career when it's like this. I've been there, and it seems like no amount of pizza can dig you out of that hole. But then I received a text message from one of my colleagues at TIFF telling me that a contract had just opened up in her department that she thought I'd be perfect for. So it turned out that I had made an impression those many months ago, and I assumed the role of Assistant Government and Foundation Relations at TIFF. And within this role, I was lucky enough to spend a great deal of time interacting with delegates, furthering my interpersonal skills, and really building my abilities to tell an organizational story, which is key, especially in the fundraising and development world. So the next big shift in my career happened 10 months ago. My mentor, Kathy Blackburn, told me over lunch one day that she was retiring and moving to the East Coast. And I was losing that close proximity to my mentor, and knowing how devastated I was going to be, she thought long and hard about finding someone that too would benefit from that mentor-mentee two-way supportive relationship. And so she suggested I connect with my current boss, John, as we both held the same degree, and he's achieved a successful career in fundraising, and that's sort of where I wanted to align my career path. And she just thought he'd be a good mentor fit for me. So the next day, I sent John that cold email, again, that dreaded cold email, and I asked him to have coffee with me at the OMA conference just to pick his brain. And again, leverage that status as an emerging professional to get anyone to sit down and have talk with you, just to pick their brains. And that was just my intention, to pick his brain, approach him as a mentee, and little did I know that my cold email eventually led to a job offer. So following our coffee the next week, I maintained an email conversation with John, and a few months later, I was sitting across from him accepting a job offer. Thank you, John. And that's when I assumed the role of coordinator of strategic initiatives at Canada's National Ballet School. Okay, so I touched on it a little bit just now, but I can't stress enough the importance of a mentor-mentee relationship. I've always made sure to identify someone that I look up to professionally, that I'm inspired by, that I can learn from, and that I can seek guidance from, because you're going to need that. You're going to need that in the early stages of your career, and even throughout. And I believe it's important to identify such an individual outside of your workplace. This person can help you maintain a connection to the broader culture and heritage network. They can offer you objective professional advice, and if you're lucky enough, they will evolve into great friendships, which is just awesome. And my internship at the ministry set me up with a slew of valuable professional connections that I didn't want to lose, and this included my mentor, Kathy. And it's really important to look at your professional connections like you would any other relationship in your life. In order for a relationship to grow, it requires time, commitment, and care. And making a connection with someone isn't just about securing a business card, it's about the dialogue and the relationship that you steward following the exchange of business cards. It's important to remember that the mentor-mentee relationship isn't just a one-way street. I think a lot of people get caught up in that it's about benefiting the mentee and the mentor doing a lot of the work. But like any relationship, both parties should be active and should benefit. So keep this in mind if you're thinking about approaching someone in a mentor-mentee capacity. Think about what you can offer to that person or what you can help them with as well. And I just love this quote by Phil Collins. In learning you will teach, and in teaching you will learn. So I think that's really applicable to the mentor-mentee dynamic. Okay, so marketing yourself. This is a key thing we all know, especially about networking and connection making. Strategize about how to market yourself as valuable in a sea of extremely well qualified and remarkable professionals, because you all are. So we have to figure out like what sets you apart. So really take a step back and think critically about this, and don't discount the value of all your career and life experiences. No job, position, experience is irrelevant to your professional growth. I wholeheartedly believe that, and I always make sure to emphasize this, that my experience as a waitress in the customer service industry is what really molded my personality to be conducive to the fundraising and development world. I mean, much of what we do is stewardship, but that's really kind of customer service in a way. And so having strong interpersonal skills is really inherent to the job. My experience as a waitress gave me confidence in those skills. It's propelled me forward through my connection making and my networking. But beyond that, I feel confident in highlighting my abilities to problem solve, my people management skills, and my ability to think quick on my feet in stressful situations. And these are all really great, transferable, valuable skills in the sector, but I certainly didn't initiate those here, and that's okay. And so further to that, it's really important that you know how to tell your own story. And it seems like kind of, an innate thing, but there's ways to think critically about how you're telling your story. You need to be able to speak about your abilities and your skills and your experience with confidence and clarity and careful reflection on why those skills set you apart. And it's really important to highlight the why, or the so what, and not just the what. Our resumes give us an opportunity to detail the what of our career paths and all the exact skills that we have. But our cover letters and our conversations with people give us the opportunity to highlight the why, or the so what, about your actual resume. So you've done X, Y, and Z skills, or you've done X, Y, and Z, and you have all these skills, but why do you do what you do? And what's driving you to be in this sector? How do you want to make an impact? What are you going to do with those skills and experiences? These are all things to think about when you're talking to professionals. And there's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek, and it's called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And he speaks from an organization, communications, and sort of a leadership perspective, but I think the point is applicable here, where whether you're trying to sell a product, engage people in a program, convince people about anything, or just engage in a conversation with someone, a meaningful conversation with someone, you should be emphasizing the why before the what. And it's the reason being that it's just far more powerful. So if I'm having a conversation with 40 of my closest friends in this room, and I wanted to talk about my role at the ballet school, I could talk to you about the what. And so what I do at the ballet school includes fundraising, program development, event planning, stakeholder communications, and partner development and stewardship. And I think these are all great things, but I could also talk to you about why I do what I do at the ballet school and why I even work at the ballet school. So I really do believe in the transformative powers of dance to improve people's lives, especially emotionally and mentally, because I've physically lived it. I danced my whole life for 18 years, and I was a very introverted girl. I felt like I carried the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I internalized everything. And dance gave me an outlet and was a vehicle for me to release all of that without having to verbally communicate or verbally release those things, which was important for me. And so it really did help me to alleviate my stress and just benefit me so much emotionally and mentally. And I really do believe that my experience through dance has shaped me incredibly, the person that I am today, how I deal with stress now, my time management, my focus, all of those skills I think I developed through dance. And when I was 20, I had to make this really difficult decision where I could continue on my path with dance, maybe open my own studio and teach professionally, or I could pursue my academic pursuits. And I really struggled with which direction I wanted to take. I thought I had to have one or the other. And so I ended up going to school and going the academic route and sort of giving up my dance career. And it was really hard and disappointing for me. But now, at the age of 28, I've been lucky enough to actually come full circle, and I now am taking those academic pursuits and applying them to my passion in history and dance. So that's why I do what I do and why it means something to me. And so, off my tangent and back to my point, if you look at the what and the why, I think the why always tells a more powerful story. So you all have a why. Everyone has a why you're here, why you're in this sector. So think about that and really develop a story, because it's having those conversations with people at conferences like this that connects you on a human level and sets you apart as an individual professional. So I think that's really, really key. Okay, so this all culminates into the importance of effective networking. So this is just a summary. Know how to tell your own story. You want to captivate your audience and make them think that you're this guy, the most important, the most interesting man in the world. Even just for 5 minutes, you want to be this guy, right? So also the importance of maintaining contact. After you've exchanged those business cards, keep the dialogue going. And maximize your networks. So for every mentor you have, or even just a professional connection, it actually opens you up to their whole network. So keep that in mind. The importance of seeking out a mentor, like I said, and I just don't hesitate and be bold. Send that cold email or just take a chance, because as Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Thanks.
All right, so now we'll hear from our third speaker virtually. So Mara Dixon, again, she's someone who's really big on social media, and we'll hear a bit of her advice. But first, I just kind of want to poll the room. Can, just by a show of hands, raise your hand if you have a professional social media account or an account that you use for professional purposes. Okay, that's a decent showing. I'll let you know that kind of if you're a younger emerging museum professional, a lot of workplaces are going to assume that you have all this social media knowledge, that you're very digital. And I found that a lot of conversations I've had one-on-one with people, that is not the case. Do you have Twitter? No. Okay, sorry. not to point the finger at Jenna, no, I'm just kidding. But not everybody has Twitter, not everybody has Instagram, not everyone feels comfortable in the digital world. But I do want to emphasize that that is very much the future, and that is where emerging museum professionals should be, and that's what you should really be working towards, and that is a skill set that every employer thinks that you already have, so make sure that it actually happens. And I love this quote that actually came from Mara Dixon. She said it to me when we were talking. Your employer should know of you before they even meet you. Okay, and how do you do that? You create a really strong online presence and an online brand. So we'll just go to the video. It's just about 5 minutes.
I am a founder of a couple of projects such as Culture Themes, Museum Selfie Day. I do the Ask a Curator Day, and I do a lot of digital and social media stuff and audience engagement, and I am known kind of as a troublemaker for museums, but that's a good thing. You kind of make up a brand name through your blog and through your writing and through your sharing. And that's a huge, huge thing that a lot of emerging professionals don't take advantage of. They feel they don't have the time to do that. They feel it's a waste of time. But actually not having that presence is going to bite them in the bum later on in life. It's always changing, so you do got to pay attention for that one. As far as blogging is concerned, it used to be, WordPress or Facebook notes or things like this, but the one that everybody seems to be using more and more now is Medium, medium.com, and that way you don't have to be responsible for a website. You just upload articles as you want. For social media, it's, obviously I'm going to say Twitter, and I'm going to say Facebook and Instagram. But if you're more comfortable with videos, do YouTubes. Lots of people are doing little YouTube videos to get information out there, and that's perfectly okay also. We never say one platform is where you should be. You should diversify your online presence. And you do kind of have to have an opinion, but it doesn't have to be a negative opinion, and I think that's where a lot of them go wrong. They always think they have to come out and prove other people wrong. Sometimes the opinion can be that you agree on it, or you like something, and that is still an opinion. I do everything from my phone. If I have 5 minutes at the airport or wherever, I'm checking in and doing this. So while it looks like I am always online and paying attention, I'm not. I'm just catching things. I'm going online, grabbing whatever I'm seeing, responding to one or two, because I do feel you need to be social on social media. So I try to respond to one or two people, but I also try to initiate one or two conversations, but don't always do it at the same time. Don't forget the world's 24 hours, right? So it's great to wake up and see something going on at 7 o'clock your time and then check again maybe at 7 o'clock at night. I always tell people, do not follow just your sector. It's vital that you follow people outside your sector because technically they're the non-visitors. So it's really important to look at what non-visitors are doing and see what you can implement or what they're doing that you can maybe do in a museum that you're not doing now. So I follow tech, I follow publishing, I follow education, and of course I follow museums and art galleries. So whenever I go online, there's always a conversation that's emerging or going on and I can dip into. Usually when I'm talking to boards of trustees and management, their fear of social media and online presence and online branding is, what if something goes wrong? And I keep going, but you're negating the 99% of the great stuff that does come out of this. Being online gives people a platform to praise you more than send you a negative. I created something for Halloween, and I thought, oh, okay, there's a TV program here in the UK called Spooks, and let's call it Muse Spooks Day. And it sounded really great until a couple of the American museums got in touch with me. And as an American, I'm very embarrassed I forgot about this, that spooks is a derogatory term sometimes in the States. It was a mistake on my part, but it was one of those things where I had to go and put hands up and go, wait guys, you can't do this, we're gonna have to change it. So this year we're doing Muse Halloween. If somebody says a negative to me, if I go right back to negative, we're gonna get nowhere. So one thing that I've learned is always remain positive. Sometimes that means I have to walk away from the keyboard for about an hour, go get myself a cup of tea and calm down. And remember, the fact that they said something to me, I should be grateful that they took the time to give me feedback, whether it was positive or negative. Nobody knows what is right and what is wrong. We are all sort of winging it. I think that the shift of how museums have gone from academia to more emotive is a scary step for a lot of professors who are teaching the courses right now, and for people who have been in this business for 20, 30 years, this is a major shift for them. So we're all learning together. And if anybody ever needs help, definitely reach out. I'm easy to stalk.
So on behalf of the OMA Council and on behalf of the Local Arrangements Committee, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. And we have a gift for you here.
Thanks, Bridget.
Let's have a round of applause.